You did everything right. You made the budget. You set the rules. And then, at 11 p.m., you bought the thing you swore you wouldn't. That's not a discipline failure. It's a design failure in how your brain is wired for spending. There's a hidden trigger that converts your intention to save into an urge to buy, and a simple protocol to stop it before it costs you another dollar. A spreadsheet sits closed on a laptop, detailing a clear path toward a down payment or a debt-free year, goals that offer a delayed reward months down the line. But when a phone screen lights up with an immediate emotional offer, that long-term plan faces an instant rival. The savings plan still exists, but its priority is temporarily displaced by the present action. This creates a direct conflict between an established spending rule and a sudden, intense desire. The diagnostic question is whether the future goal remains psychologically active at the exact moment of temptation. A discipline failure occurs when a person has the time and information to make a conscious choice, yet acts against their own long-term interests. A design failure, however, happens when the surrounding environment systematically removes those reflective moments. While routine shopping habits and emotional triggers both play roles in these spontaneous transactions, a single unplanned purchase differs fundamentally from clinical compulsive buying disorder. Pinpointing these external triggers does not absolve the shopper of responsibility. Instead, it reveals the precise mechanics of the environment, showing where to build practical barriers to protect the budget. An image of a product on a screen does not wait for a conscious decision to buy. It acts as an immediate visual cue, grabbing attention before any budget calculation begins. Researchers study this immediate reaction to map how the brain processes temptation. In an fMRI study led by Dr. Uma Karmarkar, 30 participants aged 20 to 35 viewed everyday items for 2 seconds each. They were asked a simple question: how much do you like this product? The task never mentioned shopping, pricing, or buying decisions. Yet the brain scans revealed that the ventral striatum, a region associated with reward anticipation and motivational value, automatically evaluated each item. This automatic valuation happens without any active intention to purchase. The brain registers a sense of wanting before the mind can compare options or check a bank account. This neural activity does not function as a single control center forcing a choice, and it does not guarantee a transaction. Instead, the reward response acts as a silent pressure toward action, tilting the brain toward a purchase before conscious reasoning can intervene. Stanford neuroscientist Brian Knudsen discovered that the brain processes purchasing decisions by weighing two separate competing forces: the anticipation of gain in the nucleus accumbens and the anticipation of loss in the insula. When a person looks at a desirable item, these systems engage in a silent tug-of-war. Under normal circumstances, the pain of losing money keeps spending in check. But immediate rewards trigger a phenomenon known as temporal discounting, where the brain heavily devalues future benefits, like a stable savings account, in favor of instant satisfaction. This bias intensifies during late-night hours of fatigue, stress, or boredom, when the mind seeks quick emotional regulation to soothe discomfort. A discount-tagged offer exploits this state by presenting a dual threat: the immediate appeal of acquisition and the perceived risk of losing the deal. This promise of instant relief or novelty completely overrides the abstract, distant goals of the future self. As this emotional momentum builds, the friction that normally prevents spending begins to evaporate. The remaining puzzle is how this resistance disappears completely at the moment of checkout. In 1998, behavioral economists Drazen Prelec and George Lowenstein identified a psychological barrier known as the pain of paying. When a person hands over physical cash, the transaction feels immediate and tangible, activating an aversion-related response in the brain. Credit cards and digital wallets disrupt this mechanism by separating the act of receiving an item from the immediate discomfort of parting with resources. This digital abstraction lowers the mental salience of the transaction. The price tag remains visible on the screen, but the payment format dampens the nervous system's signaling of loss, where regions like the insula play a broader role in processing financial discomfort. Similarly, modern split payment structures can further soften the perceived loss. While this design does not automatically trigger irresponsible behavior, it changes how clearly the mind registers the actual cost at the precise moment of exchange. The speed of the transaction path itself accelerates this loss of awareness. E-commerce platforms designed the rapid checkout format specifically to eliminate steps between seeing an item and owning it. In September 1997, Amazon filed a patent for a system that bypassed the traditional digital shopping cart, granted in October 1999 as U.S. Patent 5,960,411. Today, pre-saved shipping addresses and payment details remove physical pauses. Personalized recommendations constantly suggest highly relevant items, while stock alerts and countdown timers compress the decision window. Observational data shows that removing these steps raises overall spending. This convenience is not manipulative. It simply serves planned, essential purchases by saving time. The risk arises during emotionally charged, non-essential browsing, where platform speed bypasses the opportunity to reconsider. In this environment, friction, defined as the time, effort, or renewed attention required to complete a task, virtually disappears. When buying takes only a single second, the mind loses the quiet space needed to pause. To break this automatic cycle, a shopper can deploy two immediate actions. First, recognize the external signal before starting checkout. This means noticing sudden excitement or a comparison to an online post as a retail cue rather than an objective need. Second, translate the internal drive into a single sentence. I want this because I expect it to make me feel blank. The blank might represent comfort, a fear of missing out, or genuine utility. This practice relies on metacognition, the act of observing the decision-making process while it is actually happening. By naming the impulse, the brain treats the sudden surge of urgency as mere information, not as an order that requires immediate action. From this awareness, a simple if-then rule guides the next step. If an urgent, non-essential purchase appears on the screen, leave the checkout page and place the item on a separate waiting list. This shift moves the item out of the transactional flow, creating a space between the queue and the exchange of money. This waiting list initiates a cooling-off period, holding the item outside the buying path for 24 to 48 hours to deliberately restore friction. Practical consumer reports indicate that a substantial share of impulse urges simply fade away when subjected to a 48-hour wait. To make this work, leave the checkout screen within 60 seconds of recognizing the impulse, keeping the item strictly in the designated holding space. Before going to sleep that night, a shopper can systematically dismantle the path of least resistance, deleting saved credit card details to force manual entry, disabling one-click ordering options, or using an entirely separate device for transactions. Once the 48-hour window closes, the shopper reevaluates the item by asking 4 specific questions. Is the item still wanted? What exact problem does it solve? Does it fit the budget without taking resources from essential needs? Would this same item be chosen without that initial surge of urgency? Recording the final decision and the resulting emotional state in a simple log builds long-term tracking. Picture the same shopper at 11 p.m. encountering a comparable online offer. This time, they recognize the visual cue, label the internal drive as a desire for comfort, close the checkout tab, and manually delete saved payment details. The next day, they review the cart with a clear mind. Under this protocol, buying remains entirely permissible if the desire persists and the item fits the budget. The objective is not total self-deprivation, but rather creating space for a meaningful choice before money leaves the account. This friction functions as a protective pause, not a punishment. For repeated distressing spending patterns that cause financial damage, this process is not a clinical treatment. Those situations warrant professional guidance from qualified financial or mental health specialists. The action succeeds when a structured delay turns an automatic reaction into an intentional decision. In a world engineered to bypass your reflection, deliberate friction is your ultimate agency. You aren't depriving yourself, you are reclaiming the space to choose. The next time the trigger pulls, remember, the pause is where your control lives. Share your thoughts on this approach below. New sessions Tuesday and Friday. See you in the next one. Subscribe to Finance Physio. Break the chains and embrace a bright financial future.